War was a frequent element in the lives of the many societies of ancient Polynesia. Competition and revenge for insults or grievances were the main causes of conflict. In New Zealand, the Maori refined their warlike heritage to take into account the climate and terrain of their new home. The people lived intimately with their environment. This way of life ensured that war was fought in harmony with the seasons, a time to draw sustenance from the land and a time to fight for it. From birth to old age, men were trained in the skills of warfare. There are no medals.
Duffy had connected. Duffy had joined the channel. Duffy had left the server.
British and colonial troops found in the Maori a staunch adversary. Their physique, fitness, endurance and speed could not be bettered. Their shrewd military tactics so impressed the British that they recorded them and utilized them in wars from the Crimea to the Somme. These traditions of combat, under heavy fire, they battle their way through dense vegetation, guided by a system of irrigation canals.
The morning of the 22nd of May, we arrived above the aerodrome at Malimi and had a good look at the aerodrome, and we spotted a few of the Germans walking around. So I turned around and borrowed the rain gun off one of my boys. Then I got down and prepared to fire, and as soon as I squeezed the trigger, something happened. A bullet, a stray bullet or a bullet from a sharpshooter penetrated the barrel of my gun and split it open, so on, and bowled me over, and there I was. And the first thing I thought about was my mother at home, and then I saw stars, I saw everything, and I thought, oh, this is beautiful. This is a lovely way of dying. And however, I waited and waited, and then I recovered, I suppose, and I stood up, and I looked around. The boy who was firing beside me, he was firing with his rifle, and I thought he had struck me with the barrel of his rifle. However, he was still firing, and then I asked him, "What happened? Did you hit me?" And he looked up and he said, "Oh," he said, "you're shot." Mind you, he didn't say it that way. He said a few words besides that. And then I fell down again, and the blood started to pour. Prior to that, there was not a drop of blood. And then some of my boys rushed over and bandaged my face and so on, and led me away to the RAP.
The attack failed. Orders came to withdraw. To prevent the exhausted soldiers being cut off by the enemy, the battalion were redeployed east of Hanyā, away from the action, they thought.
Then this is the direction of the counterattack.
Yes, we're right on it, I think. And prior to this, I had just returned to the battalion, but cousin came over to meet me, and we hid among some rushes because he had a can of fruit, preserved fruit. Didn't want any of the other company boys to see us. And lo and behold, we didn't know that the Germans were quite close to where we were until we heard the burst of machine gun fire, and there it was.
What was the reaction of the Germans when the bayonet charge began?
Well, the only thing they could do was to get as much shelter from the machine gun fire and so on. And they all got in behind these olive trees, as you see. because of the clear path in between the trees, they had to use one tree for 20 men or something in a scrummage formation. And after the attack was over, we had to let go. Boy, it's hard to imagine people still standing on their feet in a scrummage formation. They were so thick that they were held up by the density of their bodies, you know.
German casualties were pretty heavy, so our blokes must have got right into them.
Well, I've seen one of my boys charged with the bayonet, and the tip of the bayonet went right through. One of his friends was so close, he just touched the tip of the bayonet, touched his friend. Well, as you said, Don, there'll be convulsions and I don't know what else. And there's a heck of a lot of shock as far as the recipient would be concerned.
Yes.
And
many times also when the bayonet went in, they have to fire a round from the rifle to create looseness so they can get it out.
Oh, in most cases, they just put their foot on the body of the opponent and jerk their rifles out. It's not so simple to pull it out because the muscles start to constrict. So, yeah.
The 42nd Street bayonet charge drove the Germans back nearly a mile, killing over 80 of them. Among the victims were Cretans who had befriended the Maori and who had been used by the Germans as human shields. The battle for Crete was lost. The New Zealand and Australian men wearily trudged the mountainous route to Evacuation, where the Navy would evacuate them. The Germans were too late to prevent the escape, but found nearly 6,000 men left behind. There had not been enough room on board for everyone. The final ignominy of failure.
It was terrible as far as we were concerned. Prior to deciding who were going to stay and so on, people were saying, well, you're married, you go, and so on. But the officers had the last word. We felt sad for them, and they felt sad for us because they thought, well, we might get bombed anyway. But when we got on the ship, of course, we were so pleased to get away from Crete, we forgot the others until we got back to Alexandria.
Η συνεισφορά των Γερμανών στη μάχη της Κρήτης ήταν πάρα πολύ μεγάλη. Μόνο να σκεφτεί κανείς ότι τόσες χιλιάδες μίλια μακριά από την πατρίδα τους βρεθήκαν εδώ να πολεμήσουν μαζί μας. Δεν μπορεί να το περιγράψει δηλαδή κανείς πόση μεγάλη συνεισφορά μας έκαναν. Και ακόμα εδώ σε αυτή την περιοχή μπορώ να πω πως ήταν αποκλειστικά έργο δικό τους όλοι οι Γερμανοί που σκοτωθήκαν εδώ. Διότι οι δικοί μας δεν μπορούσαν να πλησιάσουν. Πολλά αεροπλάνα αυτοί βρεθήκαν εδώ, είχαν κλειστεί και όπλα εμείς δεν είχαμε μόνο από τις άκρες, μακριά από το αεροδρόμιο. Όλοι οι Γερμανοί που σκοτωθήκαν εδώ γύρω στην περιοχή οφείλεται στους Νεοζηλανδούς που υποστηρίζανε το αεροδρόμιο και το ύψαμα τούτο. Ο πόλεμος γενικά είναι μια καταστροφή, ένα κακό πράγμα βέβαια. Αυτό οφείλεται στη μεγαλομανία και στα συμφέροντα των μεγάλων, των τρελών, αποκλειστικώς. Που σκοτώνονται άνθρωποι που δεν ξέρουν καλά-καλά για ποιο σκοπό σκοτώνονται. Και εμείς είδαμε σε αυτό